Hey everybody, welcome to Brick Vault. Today is another LEGO Top 10 Mocks of the Week episode. That's where I show you guys the coolest custom creations I happen to see people building in LEGO throughout this last week. And as always, I highly encourage you guys to check out those links in the description below. Check out the actual Builders Flickr pages if you have some time. And of course, there are extras, tons and tons of extras that I simply do not have time to talk about. This week in our web store, my brother put up some instructions for a custom Luke's land speeder that I think he's pretty proud of. We've got a full video on that as well, so if you haven't had a chance to check out the custom builds that you can actually try to build yourself, you can go to our web store, www.brickvault.toys. That's also linked in the description below. And all right, let's jump into the very first build of the week. This is from Captain Smog. It's called Robotic Stagecoach. Now, this is exactly the kind of fantasy sci-fi stuff I love to look at. The Western American cowboy era and sci-fi is always going to be crossed together. I think there's just something about the frontier and exploration that really captures both of these themes so well. And what we have here looks like an old style stagecoach built into a robotic horse. I mean, the legs feel very horse-like. It's galloping, and a couple of really nice looking sci-fi speeders with, you can see the cowboy hats and some updated, very powerful looking revolver pistols. The techniques are wonderful. The landscape little tiny builds are just simple. They both function as stands for the vehicles, and then there's just a couple of nice little details that really sets the stage for this whole scene. This was built for Mock Wars. I think it's a great entry. And then this second build comes from Vince Telos. We have Myriapodobus. I don't know if I said that totally right, but it very much reminds me of the cat bus that we got from My Neighbor Totoro, except this time it is an insect version of a bus. And if I'm not mistaken, it kind of reminds me of a centipede. He actually used the insectoid legs, which is really fun. And the build style here feels relatively simple, yet extremely clean. And what we have here is just a really well-realized idea. The waving or curvy shape of this insectoid bus gives me the impression that this could actually be kind of a smooth ride if you're one of the passengers. It feels like it could be pretty comfortable, but I suppose you'll just have to imagine what this might feel like. And now we are looking at JME Wheeler's Sheltering Sky Research Facility. Builds like this are always a lot of fun, where somebody thinks of an entire sci-fi or fantasy scene and builds it out in micro scale in wonderful detail. You can see it's, I think, a tropical sort of ocean. The water is quite light. You can see also, I think, palm trees or very lush vegetation growing on top of these tall, spiring rocks. And then you have these really fantastical, sort of futuristic buildings sticking out from the rock face. It looks like there's some walking paths between a couple of those rock spires, and the black and trans blue color combination almost makes me feel like this could be some bad guy's secret lair. It kind of gives me Incredibles vibes. It's really just a wonderful scene through and through. And now we are looking at a build from Jayfa, who's amazing at creating Lego brick build characters. This is John Silver. Officially, this is my favorite new use for those balloon pieces that came out a few years back. The curved, smooth shape of this is just a perfect fat belly that we have. And I'm pretty sure the cloth piece there is Darth Vader's cape from the Brick Built Figs. He's got one organic arm and one very large, very sinister looking, powerful robotic one. And there's also sort of an 18th century or a pirate feel to him. Doesn't he kind of look like he could be a pirate with that robotic peg leg? There's just some fun and personal details thrown in here. You can really start playing around with the universe of this character. And then that pink floaty friend or companion absolutely throws me to a loop at the very end. Now here's another interesting character design. This is from Tim Schwalfenberg. The title is Balentrope Terra Leviosa, and I think that's probably a Latin name for whale or something like that. That's just a guess. We have a flying whale, and the face is shrouded, but it does kind of look like a panda. Oh wait, I just read the description. It says Pandarian Merchant Guild. So yes, this is a panda merchant flying on a whale. You know, just a classic you know, everybody knows about the flying panda whales, and Tim did an awesome job of bringing this creation to life. I always wonder how funny fantasy ideas like this start out. Perhaps this maybe was a whale design at first, and then after they finished it or nearly finished it, he decided to spice it up and start I don't know, creating a funny, weird thing around it. I like the harness that goes around the front of the whale face. It looks very well thought out. The shrouded face with the hat is also a nice touch. Now I just had to throw this architecture design in here. There's just something so impressive about it. From Rocco Butlier, we have the Burj Khalifa. He says roughly 20,000 parts went into this, because just looking at the design, you can see it's made up of just a ton of tiny little bits. And the dimensions are 18 inches by 51 or 46 centimeters by 130 centimeters high. And the funny thing here is that if you look at the smaller buildings down below, if you've ever gone to see a micro city build in LEGO before, this is all kind of just built at the same scale. The fact is the Burj Khalifa is just so insanely huge that it ultimately just dwarfs anything beneath it. The scale is 1 to 650. And the details for this build are absolutely wonderful. I love the inclusion of all those different chromed and shiny pieces along with the trans clear ones. It really makes this build shine, quite literally and figuratively. And I don't exactly know how he got all those dimensions to work out so well at the bottom, but the inclusion of those track pieces mixed with the triangular tiles really was an excellent and expert little touch. Now let's jump onto another fantasy build. When I first saw this, I was thinking, oh, this is it feels so much like a Porco Rosso design, and then sure enough, in the description, Eric, the designer, writes that this definitely was inspired by Studio Ghibli's Porco Rosso. I think what grabbed me here is that splayed out bottom of the ship, and also the incredible color combination that we have with the yellow and that teal. The ribs along the top of the wings, and the fact that the wings are so rounded, just gives you an impression of kind of a bubbly, cartoony feel. And of course the oversized massive engine with the large propeller just bumps up that level of cartooniness and fantasy one more notch. I think he tried to make a face in the front of the ship, which is funny. He brick built in, I think, one of those old eye prints, and ultimately it is just a fun looking biplane. Did I say it was called the Wave Defender? I can't remember if I said that in the beginning. And now we're looking at something called Viaduct Falls by Paul Vermeesh. The fade of that light blue waterfall into the trans clear pieces and basically totally white is my favorite bit of design detailing here, but there's a lot of things to really appreciate. The long, smooth, elegant curves of the flexi tubes in brown that go up to make that wonderful design for a tree is something I haven't quite seen before, at least not quite like that. And the tower design that we have feels relatively simple, but it contrasts incredibly well with the layered dark bluish gray rocky terrain below. If this was larger, I think this would be a much longer sort of Roman aqueduct kind of waterway. I couldn't really tell, but I think it works incredibly well at the scale that it's currently built at. Also, shouldn't this kid have a scared face? It looks like he's about to fall very far into what looks like a not very soft landing, but who knows? Now from a builder, Ken Ito, we have the Bottlenose Dolphin 2.0. This is the second pass, I suppose, from this designer on this animal. And from the surface, this may not look like some incredibly impressive design at first, but the combination of slope pieces that match up here is not an easy feat by any means. If you couldn't already tell, I absolutely love sci-fi, fantasy, mechanical based designs, but when it comes to something purely organic, you cannot cut corners the same way when you're trying to get larger connections to all look proportional. This thing has to be smooth. You can't just add a funny, weird little bit of greebling or detailing in an area that doesn't quite match up the way you want. This thing has to work through and through, and it just feels so incredibly smooth and elegant from the nose to the tail. Also, the stand is just a wonderful bit of building. It sort of adds to that long, streaky, sleek feeling that you want to have with a dolphin jumping through the water at high speed. And if you enjoy animal builds or organic creature builds, I highly recommend you check through this designer's Flickr. Remember, everything is linked in the description below. And now let's jump to the very final build of the week. You have probably seen these different lettered ships as extras in the previous weeks because Dave Catella has been working on his Alphabet Starfighter group for months, I think. Many months, I think. And a handful of them I think I've actually talked about as individual builds during our Top 10 Mocks of the Week episode for Sundays. But he has finally completed the Alphabet, and it is so impressive to look through the whole thing. I'm not going to show you every single one close up here while I talk, but there are just some wonderful designs here. They're not just impressive due to the fact that he built all of them at a relatively large size, but there's a great diversity of color combination. Each one of these letters is also themed. The letter itself actually stands for something many of the times, some of which are throwbacks to older themes. Other ones are just kind of your own thing. A few of these have morphing capabilities, which is really fun. I love the Y-Wing, for example. And this is simply a unique Lego building feat that you don't see. This is an individual challenge that this designer gave themselves, and he finally produced a result that just looks amazing. I love this final shot that we have here. And alright, that is going to be it for this Top 10 Mocks of the Week episode. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Remember to check out all those links in the description below. We've got a web store, www.brickvault.toys. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe, and we'll see you next time at Brick Vault.